Yeah. All right. Good morning, everybody. Today is Daf Yudalid. Mesechus Baba Basra. Az is not here today. Too bad. You would have enjoyed today's Daf. Little Navi based. No, Navi based. All right. So we left off 2 lines at the top. We were talking about. Sure. Yeah, I left my cup in the other room, so I'll have to remember that afterwards. 6 is great. So the Gemara says, we said earlier that when you roll a Sefer Torah, you have to leave enough parchment on one side to wrap around the pole, and the other side to wrap around the circumference of the, because it's going the other way, so the circumference around the Sefer Torah. So there has to be enough blank space to go there, so therefore you don't have the writing, going around. 2 lines in the top and Yudal and Aleph, Ramini, Tchila Sefer v'Sefer Kadei Logo. So so it says the beginning and end of the Sefer, right, is right because there's 2 poles by Sefer Torah, we'll soon see, is a mount to roll. So it knows it's the same. We before differentiated between the first is just around the pole and the sof is around the entire circumference. Was to go wrap around on if it means the beginning and the end, it means to go around the amud kasha kaf. Then it's a kasher on the previous Mishnah, which said, or the previous Brisa, which said that it was at the end. And but it means that there should be enough blank space to go on the entire parchment. So kasha amud, so kasha the one that says it just as go on the pole. So the reason why you use like a generic term in order to wrap around is because both the tchila and the sof have different requirements. One is to wrap around just the pole, and the other one is to wrap around the entire parchment. Rav Ashi Amar Kitanya no. This Bryce over here was referring to Sefer Torah. Yes, really is around the entire thing, but really it's referring to a Sefer Torah. Kidatani kolas from the galim mitchilas on the seifa. All svarim that are normally written are written, in other words, basically they start in one area and it goes to the end and you wrap it around there. For Sefer Torah, nigal them tzasav. However, Sefer Torah basically is wrapped in the middle, right? You wrap it forward and backwards, and therefore, and it has 2 poles, so therefore it's different. The other one we're talking about just has to be the distance on the pole is only was referring to when it has 1 pole and it's completely wrapped around. For instance, our Megillas, right? The way that people have Megillas. But the other one has 2 poles, so therefore those 2 are both the same. It should be able to blank space around the entire parchment, the circumference. And Amrav Ezra Tzadok Kachaya Kaisin Svarim Shav Yerushalayim Oisin Sifrei. This is the Sefer Yerushalayim used to go ahead and write their Sifrei Torah. And Tana Rabbanan speaking about Ein Oisin Sefer Torah Loi Archo Yisra Kefa V'Loi Kefa Yisra Archo. You should not go ahead and make your Sefer Torah longer. Now, longer means like the height of it, when they're doing, Hagba, whatever it is. Right? Speaking of Hagba, so Yigal just joined. We're around a third of the way down in Yudal and Amud Aleph. So it's just as long as the Sefer Torah is with the circumference, right? So it's long versus the circumference, which goes around the Sefer Torah when it's strapped. You take a string, you put it around it, and that string should be the same length, the height as the Sefer Torah.
No, they automated it.
So
that's something else. So
how tall the Sefer Torah? Now is what is the circumference around? So Amarle, the gvil, when it comes to the gvil, which is the I think it's the unprocessed parchment, a little thicker. Right, so he says that is Bigvil Shisha, that's 6 tfachim. So it's 6 tfachim around, that's the known. So therefore, make the height 6 tfachim, and Beklaf Bekama, but how much is a klaf? A little thinner, so any day, he didn't know. And Rav Huna cost of sheeting sifrei the rice. I'm sorry? I don't believe so. Yeah, I don't believe so. Right. So let's see. So it says Rav Huna, it could come out pretty close. I have no idea, But Rav Huna cost of sheeting sifrei the rice. So he wrote 70 Sifrei Torah, only one of his matched up the height to the circumference. That's what I'm saying, 1 out of 7. You read? You asked me about today, so I'm saying the Gemara says whatever that. He only wrote 1, and he wrote from the calf skin. And it happened to have been he was 1 for 1. So Rabbanan, and the Rabbanan basically cast their eyes upon him, like they praise him so much that the Melech HaMalves basically inspected all of his meisim, and then he passed away. Einar, Rav Hamnuna, Kasav Rabbi Ami, Dalad Meya Sifrei Torah. Have you heard about Rabbi Ami? He wrote 400 Sifrei Torah, right? Imagine that. Samalu. I don't know. Maybe you're hearing a folk tale. That's a lot of writing. Maybe he just wrote the pasuk Torah Tzilan Moshe, which is like a Sefer Torah, and wrote that maybe 400 times.
400 is an exaggeration. That's like the term that's used in other places too.
It is used.
Right.
Right. Yeah. Right. It is. Yeah, it is. So they said, but in other words, but over here they assumed that there was a legit number, so they didn't answer that way. It was just an exaggeration. They answered the other way, that which he wrote 400 times was something else. Some of them, Rabbi Zera, Nata, Rabbi Yana. Speaking of Rabbi Yana, he planted Arba Meya Karmi, right? 400 vineyards. Perhaps it was a 2-1 type of, that's the minimum size vineyard, which is 5 vines. You have two, and then 1 like a tail. They did 500, 400 of those. So Meisve. Now we're going to ask a question from a long brisa, and we're going to discuss this brisa. All right, so Meisve. Aron she'also Moshe Amasayim v'chetzi archo, v'amim v'chetzi rochva, v'amim v'chetzi kamaso. But basically, it was 2.5 by 1.5. The height is not important for our today's discussion. It was 2.5 long amos by 1.5 wide. So the amma bashi tefachim. So we're talking about amma, which is 6 tefachim. So it will be 15 by 9. 15 tefachim long, 9. Now, balu chazarchan shisha rachman shisha avyan avyan shloisha. So the luchos were 6 by 6, 6 tefachim by 6 tefachim. With a thickness of 3. So those were menachos keneged archos shel Aaron. So those were stacked. So you got the 2 luchos here, right? You got 2 luchos here. Take them together, right? So they stacked them down next to each other along the length. So we said they were 6 by 6. So you have 1 6 by 6 here, and then 1 6 by 6 here, lying across in this box in the Aaron that was 15 by 9. Now. So how much did that take up? So how much did they take up? 6 plus 6 is 12. So there were 3 left over. So there was 3 left. Now, say now the depths of the walls, it was actually a measurement of 15 from the outside. So on the inside, they actually had to take up some depth of the wall. Each one was a half a tefach. So therefore, how much space do you have left? You have 2 tvachim of empty space. Shevahen, Sefer Torah Menach. Over there was a Sefer Torah that was placed in that space. Namar the Pasuk says, there was nothing in the Aron except for that, the 2 luchos. Now, my ein be'aron rak. So what does it mean? There was nothing in the Aron only, right? So this is known as a limitation after limitation. So that usually negative, and a negative is a positive. El Rabbos comes to include something. So in other words, not only were the luchos inside the Aron, also Sefer Torah shemunach b'Aron. There was a Sefer Torah that was left in the Aron. Now. So we said Pirnas Arko. So we went ahead and calculated the length. Now let's go to Arko. Let's let's go ahead and calculate the width, right? So we took care of the 15, right? It was 6 plus 6, 2 halves for the walls, which is 13, plus the 2 for the Sefer Torah. Now what about the width? That was 9. So that was 6 tvachim. So and the shloshim. There were 3 left tvachim. So you have half of the width of the on both sides, on the top and the bottom. So therefore you have 9 minus 1 minus 6. You have 2 tvachim left. In other words, you need some space to get your hands in to pull out the Sefer Torah. So therefore there was a gap between the luchos and the wall and the Sefer Torah and the wall. So therefore, you go ahead and you put it in. So this was all the opinion of Rabbi Meir. Now we're going to have one more shita as to the size of it, and we'll discuss it. Now Rabbi Huda, Biyamo bas kamisha tvachim alufais. So no, it was 2.5 by 1.5. I forget the height for a second, which is 1.5. 2.5 by 1.5. It was not referring to amos of 6 tefachim. Says Rabbi Huda, it was amos of 5 tefachim. So that would be 5 times 2.5 is 12.5. And 5 times 1.5, which would be so it would be 12.5 by 7.5. Now let's see. So and the luchos were the same size. It was 6 by 6, and with the thickness of 3. So menachos be'archashon, those were lying sideways in the aron. So kamaluchos archos be'aron. How much they take up? Still 12 tvachim. And how much is left according to this? 12.5 minus 12. Nishar chatzi tefach. So etzba l'kais hazeh, etzba l'kais hazeh. So it basically had there's 4 etzbos in a tefach. So it had basically a half a tefach was the total thickness of the walls. That was, according to Rabbi Yehuda, the walls were half the size that Rabbi Meir says. So there are only 1 etzba, and 1 etzba, 1 plus 1, 1 etzba plus 1 etzba is half a tefach. So therefore, the half a tefach plus the 12 equals 12.5. So that Pinas says that. So Pinas says, I don't know, say Pinas.
Look what not take now. So you maybe a gap rabbit because you don't take the start as supposed to be.
This Torah, right? Yes, very good. So he says, okay, so you explain the length. Now let's talk about the width. So so how much were the luches? So those were 6 tefachim. So neshtam tefachim exo. We said it was 7.5 according to Rabbi Yehuda. The same again, chatzi tefach esba maxal lekaisel zeh v'esba maxal lekaisel zeh. So each one was espa and a half each wall. Nishtar sham tefach shabo. And saying that was the base. Yeah. So he says, right. So it turns out there was 1 tefach remaining. So it would be nishtar sham tefach shabo. Aidim amudim shinamar, and it says over there. So now there was a gap space, right? Because there was 7.5 minus a half. So 7 and 6, right? So therefore, there was a little bit of space. So what was placed there? Mm-hmm. There were these silver poles that were made by Shlomo Melech, as the pasuk says. It says Shenamar. So Ephron Aisalo Hamelech Shlomo. So he made like from the wood, from the cedar wood, he made like a throne, amud of asa kesef, and he made these poles made of silver, right? And he says, right, so and those were also, so there were 2 silver rods that were there, and there was also, and they made for also behind it a back of gold, and the place to sit of the argamon of the purple.
Purple.
So in other words, that was the place in the gap space over there. Now the Argo, and now speaking of the Argos, about Pelishtim. Now when the Pelishtim went ahead and they took the Aron, and then they were hit with plagues, and they wanted to go ahead and return it. So in addition to sending back the Aron, he also sent I believe a golden chest, right, back to Bnei Israel as a gift. And I was take your Aron back, and also take this box, right? So now this Argos about Pelishtim. So the one they sent as a gift to the so Munach Mitzado, that actually stood next to the Aron. It was next to the Aron. Even when they brought it back to the base of Mikdash, it was brought, or the Mishkan, it was next to the Aron. Shnei says, "Bas klei hazav asher shvasam loy asham tasivo ba'arges Mitzado v'shachem aiso v'halachalo." Right. So it says over there that they went ahead and they said it to them to be this box to be next to the Aron on its side, and then they sent it off. So we say Olav Sevitar Munach, and upon this box that was next to the Aron, that's where the Sefer Torah was according to Rabbi Yehuda. It was not inside. There was no room inside because it was only 12.5 inside, not 15. So that was placed upon the box. Not inside. So we said and rak. So the lashon, the double negative. What does that come to? The rabbis shivrei. That refers to the broken pieces of the luchos that were placed inside the aron. So now that was the two shitas between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Meir was the first one of 6 tefachim, and Rabbi Yehuda was the 5 tefachim. Now, B, so that's Sefer Torah Kifu. That's a little bit like Alan's point before. B, so that's Sefer Kifu Vav tefachim. So it says, okay, now if the Sefer Torah is the circumference around it, right, is 6 tefachim. So So now they didn't exactly use pi. Instead of using 3.14, they use 3. Okay, so something has a circumference of 6. So 3 normally is 3 to 1. So 6 divided by 3 is 2. So it'll be the diameter, the space it takes up, the width of, or the width of the diameter would be 2, right? 2 and 10. So he says, and since it was rolled in the middle, it wasn't just rolled around one end, one simple circle. It was 2 circles rolled into each other. So therefore, when you go ahead and you roll it together, so it's more, right? You roll it together, and it's more than 2 tvachim. So So how can the something which is larger than 2 tvachim, because it's rolled from both sides, so you have to add them both together, and therefore it wasn't completely tight, and therefore, so how do you fit something which is more than 2 in a space of 2? Right? No, it was only written from one. It was written from one side. It wasn't 2. It was really only 1. So it was the kati tray betray. Okay, but it's 2 by 2. It's very tight. It's really hard to get out. So in other words, that some of it stuck out. Those of you who have the R scroll, there's a picture right by that little circle picture. So basically, most of it was rolled here. And a little bit towards the end was just, rolled on top in order to make the circumference a little smaller in order for it to be able to accessible, to take it out of the, to be taken out of the oven.
Is this cover used?
There was no hot take.
I'm trying to think if it was used during every 7 years.
It's very small.
Yeah, right. I don't think it was used.
Why didn't you just roll it halfway?
What do you mean?
Roll it halfway, keep it around on that one.
What do you mean?
So it'll only be 2 tvachim.
Well, it is rolled, but the circumference is 2, even if you roll it tight. So you can't. It was too tough to fit into 2. You're just saying to stick it and strip it at once, and that's it. And then it's. So the chari need to be accessible, because they said it had to be accessible because they had to take it from top to bottom. It could be it was taken out, right? So
okay.
So if we assume it was taken out, then it's not a question, right? So if it wasn't taken, right, the luchos were never taken out, right? The luchos were never taken out afterwards. So
the gap to be able to.
Right, we said earlier, right? So now, but it could be maybe potentially to take it out, or if it was actually used. Now, so we say, so Ag Rabbi Yehuda, so Ma'akar Delesi Arga Sefer Torah Heichi Yosef. So wait, it's a good question. So you said the Sefer Torah, according to Rabbi Yehuda, stood upon the box that was said by the Plishtim. So what happened before the Plishtim came? Where was the Sefer Torah then? So my answer is no, Dafa, nothing minay. It was actually a little board, a little ledge, a shelf that stuck out from the Aron, the Yosef Sefer Torah, and the Sefer Torah was placed upon that. Okay, fine. Right, Meir, hi, mitzad Aron, mayavi. So what does Meir do with the puzzle? It says mitzad Aron, right? We learn over there the Sefer Torah, so mitzad Aron, so mayavi. So how we buy the mitzanach leimitzad v'loy mitzanach beri luchos. You might have thought maybe the luchos were on each side and the Sefer Torah was in between. Therefore, it says minat sad, meaning the Sefer Torah is on the tzad. It was always inside minat sad. It was inside, but on the side of the inside. Rameir amudei heikri havi. So according to Rameir, so he says, where were these poles? So heikri havi kaimi. So maybe right, they were outside. Right, Meir Shivrei Luchos Menachim Biaron Minale. According to Meir, the broken luchos, where were they? Now, so Minale. How does he know that they were also placed inside? Because the other one used the other pasuk. Luchos Menachim Biaron Minale. So Nafkale Midrafuni lives from Rafuni. Dam Rafuna Ma'adat Silos Basamina Shi Nikro shame. They called it a shame. Shame Hashem Tzavako is V'Yoshev Ekrudim Olam. It says over there they called it the shame. Shame Hashem. So double shame means Malamed. So we learn over there the double lashon of shame means that both the luchos and the shiva luchos are both placed in the aron. So why doesn't Rabbi Yehuda learn from there? So he says, no, how only boil? They actually need a pasuk for something else. Look at Rabbi Yechanan. Dama Rabbi Yechanan, Dama Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai, Milam H. Shem. That the Shem Hashem, the 72-letter name, or the 42-letter name, or the 70-letter, I think it's 70 and 42-letter name, then Yud Vavke, that was written and placed inside the Aron. That was what it means, shame, that was inside. So doesn't Rabbi Meir also need to fast? He says, you're right. Ela Shiva Luchas Monachim B'Aron. How does he know Shiva Luchas were placed? There's Minale. It's an Afle, Miditani Rabbi Yisrael, that which Rabbi Yosef taught. The Tani Rabbi Yosef, it's the passage says, Asher Shibarta v'Samtem. That which you broke and placed them. So Malamed Shaluchos v'Shiva Luchas Monachim B'Aron. Those were placed inside the Aron. Avi Idach. So why doesn't he learn from that pasuk? How the pasuk says Shibarta, when the Kodesh Baruch said that which she broke. I mean, the Kodesh Baruch Yasher Shibarta, right? The Shkoyach Shibarta. In other words, that was the right move at the time. Fine. 2 dots. Third last skinny line. Taner Rabbanan. Now let's get into some Navi talk. Taner Rabbanan Sidon Shel Navim. The order of the Navim is as follows.
Subject away from Baba Basra.
The Gemara is ADD. We got to the Sefer Torah, the size of the Sefer Torah we had before. I'll tell you in a second. Hurry up here. 1 second. We were talking about dividing Kisvei Kodesh.
For the Yerusha.
Yeah, Yerusha, you get to divide Kisvei Kodesh in 1 parchment, 2 parchments. Then we got into the discussion of parchments. Now the size of parchments. Now we're onto Navim, right? Like ADD. We go from one thing to the other. Taner Rabbanan Sidon Shel Navim. What was the order of Navim? Let's go through it. Right, 8 of the calendar. Yeshua is the order. Yeshua, Shoftim, Shmuel, Malachim, Yirmiyah, Yecheskel is number 6, Yeshaya, V'Shnei Maser. And the trail, sir, that is number 8. So the Gemara says, now, Hashay, Kadim. I said Hashay was earlier to see Tchila Siva Shavei Hashay. Then Hashem, why should he be the first Navi that Hashem spoke to him first? The Gemara says, what do you mean? He spoke with Hoshea first. There were many of the between the time of Moshe Rabbeinu to Hoshea. He was the first Navi in his generation. Hoshea, the Yeshaya, Amos, and Micha. Those 4 were contemporaries, and Hoshea was the first one in the Nevuah then. Gemara says, so then Hoshea should come before. Well, why is Yeshayahu before then? Right? So came the Chsiv, Nevuah, Gabi, Chagos, Zachari, Malachi. Since his Nevuah was recorded by Chagos, Zachari, Malachi, Chagos, Zachari, Malachi, Soif Navim, Havi, and those were the end of Navim. Therefore, Chashdei Badai, he was with them. Okay, so maybe you write Hoshea on his own and let him go and be before all of them. The Gemara says, no. I did this since it's very small, by small amount, then we're worried we'll get lost. Now, immediately, Yeshaya Kadem Yirmiyah. Yeah, there's a little catch here. So he says, as immediately Yeshaya Kadem Yirmiyah. So Yeshaya came before Yirmiyah. Now Yirmiyah was listed first, right? Yirmiyah, I think, was on the list. He was 5. Right, Yecheskel was 6, Yeshaya was 7. So Michli Yeshaya called him in the Yirmiyah. The Yecheskel, right? Yecheskel. So so let the Yeshaya go first. Bereisha. So Gemara says, no, came in the Malachim Seifei Churbana. Since Malachim, which is the one before, ended with destruction. The Yirmiyah Kula Churbana, and Yirmiyah was full of destruction. The Yecheskel Bereisha Churbana of the Seifei Nechmasa, but the Yecheskel, the end of the Yecheskel, is Nechama, right? Consolence V'Yeshua V'Shayahu Kula Nechamasa. So therefore, Sabchina Korban Nechabana V'Nechamasa Nechamasa. Therefore, we're going to go ahead and put the destruction by the destruction and the consolation by the consolation.
You said that you'll be able to wrote for a lot of months.
We're going to see who wrote today, but we're going to get there in 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Okay. Actually, I told Alan 7:30. It might be a minute or 2 late, but maybe we'll get to the bottom at 7:30. So, Ksuvim. What was the order of the Ksuvim? That was Rus. Here's the order: Rus, the Sefer Tehillim, the Iyov, Mishlei, Koheles, Shir Shirim, Kinos, Daniel, Megillas Esther, and Ezra. The Divrei Yam and Divrei Yam. That was the order. According to this, Shita says that Iyov was a contemporary of Moshe Rabbeinu. So Iyov should be all the way in the beginning. So Gemara says, so we don't want to start with something that is perennios related. The Gemara says, "I rus," which was first. Now perennios see. That was also full of perennios. The Gemara says, "These at the end, it's a little bit all of it." Now Rabbi Yechon. Lamini Krosh tomorrow. Rosh Sheyetzi Men David Shiril Kodesh Baruch Hu B'Shir Says Yishbachos. Right, that Rus that came from was David and his descendants who went ahead and praised Hashem with their songs and poems. The Gemara says, "I Mikasan." So who wrote everything? So Moshe Kasav Sifra Moshe wrote the Chumash and also Parshas Bilam, and even Parshas Bilam, even though that's technically in the Sefer Torah. Nevertheless, Parshas Bilam is not necessarily connected to the Sefer Torah. It would have to do with an outside nation trying to curse. Nevertheless, that was included. Moshe Rabbeinu wrote that. The Eov, and Moshe Rabbeinu also wrote Eov. And Yoshua, what did Yoshua write? Kasa Sifra, he wrote Sefer Yoshua. Ushmona Pesukim Shevet Torah, and also the last Pesukim of Torah after when Moshe Rabbeinu died. And Shmuel, Kasa Sifra, he wrote his Sefer V'Shoftim. He also wrote Shoftim, the Rus. And Rus. And David, Kasav Sefer Tehillim, Aidei Asar Zakanim. David HaMelech wrote Sefer Tehillim along with other Zakanim who were not necessarily in his generation, but they had Shiros and Tishbachos, and stuff that were passed down, and David HaMelech compiled them and included them in Sefer Tehillim. What are they? Aidei Adam Arishon. One of them was one of the Kapitlach. Kuf Lamed Tes is written by Adam Rishon. The Rashi brings down all the different kapitlas that they're in, and some you'll recognize. So he wrote that one that was written by Adam Rishon. It has to do with an unformed man. That was one second. Adam Rishon. That's one. By the Malchit Tzedek. That was two. Malchit Tzedek was Kuf Yud. By the Avram Avinu also he was included. Right. It says over there he's Eisan Ezrachi. That's three. Moshe Rabbeinu. He wrote also number Tefillah LaMoshe. That was for Moshe Rabbeinu. That's 35 V'Aidei Haman, and also the Haman Maskil Haman, and the Aidei Yeduson, right? And also Lamatzech Yeduson that was included. Have I heard it? It's a Mizmor, right? It says over here. With Haman, it was 38. No, it doesn't say who it was. Oh, I think he was. Where's Ozzy? We need him, right? So let's see. Let's just finish up. The Aidei Dusan, the Aidei Asaf, and also Asaf, who Shimi's more than Asaf, right? What?
Asaf,
yeah. The Aidei Shlosh B'nei Korach, right? That was exactly B'nei Korach, right? So those it was three. So therefore, 7 plus 3, that's 10. And Yirmiyah Kasav Sifra. Yirmiyah wrote his sefer. And the Sefer Malachim, the Kinas also wrote Malachim, and Kinas, and Chizkiah, the Siyasa, and Chizkiah, and those around it, and they wrote Kosvu, Yeshaya, Mishlei, Shir Hashirim, and Koheles. In other words, he wrote some of the things, even though a lot of these were written by Shlomo, so some of them didn't have time to publish it, right, to put it out. So therefore, even though they were technically written, right, they had to, and their endings came quite abruptly. So therefore, he was one who came afterwards and put it out. Actually, it's like Yechazkel, Shnemasar, as a Trasar, Daniel Megillas Esther. That was written by Asher Gedolah. Ezra Kasav Sifra V'Yachesh Shal Divrei Yamim. And Ezra wrote his Sefer Ezra, and also wrote all Divrei Yamim up until his lineage up until him. And Messiah the Rav is Rav. He didn't go ahead and leave Bavel until he was miyaches. He made sure that his own lineage was 100% glad, and only then he went up, and that's why it was traced through Divrei Yamim. And who was the one who finished Divrei Yamim? That would be Nechemiah ben Chachlai. So that would be Nechemiah ben Chachlai. He finished composing it, and we will stop here. Shkaich, everybody. Tomorrow is Hashem. We will continue from here.
Last lines.
Oh, good question.
Who wrote?
The